All right, today I'm going to be talking about my notes that I developed on the self. Self. And, some of you might be familiar with first person, second person, and third person. And that's what I'll talk about first. But then I'll be talking beyond just first, second, third, with my notes on the self, beyond first, second, and third person. So if you're not aware what first person is really just the idea of yourself. Yeah, the ego, the idea of what you are as yourself. Okay, and I guess you could look in the mirror or see yourself in the camera, right? And that could be your idea of the self. But you're not always seeing yourself, so more often than not, the idea that you have of yourself is what you perceive yourself within your mind to be. Okay. And not going to go to second person right away. We're going to go straight now to third person. Third person is when you see yourself from the outside. It's not an out of body experience, but if I and me and myself, these things would be first person. Then if I talked about myself, you see, in third person, I would say, Luca is going to be doing this, and I know it's me that is saying this, but that is an example of third person. And another example is I could talk to myself by having an exchange of conversation between first person and third person. Okay, and then I could say I am thinking about doing something like this, and as I go into third person, it's like the critic aspect of myself that says, well, if you're going to be doing that, you should probably think about these other things first. And this is not like multiple personality disorder. It's just because, well, it could be, to be honest, it could be if you're not actually consciously aware of what you're doing. But when you are consciously aware of what you're doing and you have a monologue, the dialogue with yourself, when you kind of piggyback back and forth between first person being the idea of the self and then allowing for you to be the critic of yourself, okay, you can then allow the third person still being you. It's still yourself. It's all you. There is no difference. It's always you. But that third person that becomes a critic of yourself allows you to constructively criticize the idea of the self being the first person. Okay, and this is how what I like to call it is, if I'm, my name is Luca, for example, that would be kind of like first person. But the third person I would then say is the analytical Luke, the part of me that analyzes myself and is the critic of myself. Okay. So then I come to second person, and the way I see the second person is the intermediary between the two. Okay. Because let's just say, I'm in first person and I think that something is a good idea to do. And my third person says, well, you should think about this and that because, when you think about those kinds of things, you're going to get a better idea of what to do. And then the intermediary between those two is the second person, where it is kind of like they would be the mediator. And if you don't know what a mediator is, when two people would have a conversation with each other, the mediator mediates the conversation in order to arrive at a resolution. Okay? And for example, if you're first person, again, this is always you. This is always you. You don't want to be confusing yourself into thinking that it's somebody else. It is always you. But you need to be consciously aware of why you are using first person and third person in an intermediary. Okay? Without this awareness and the realization of being conscious of these things, then you'll probably get lost within your mind and develop something that would be a mental disorder. Okay, but going forward, you can use these things to your advantage because more often than not, let me tell you, the conversation and the dialogue that you have with other people is actually never as important as the dialogue that you have with yourself. Yeah. And it's called contemplating, reflecting, okay? Because you can reflect on the things that you did, and then you can then contemplate them by embracing the third person within you in order to contemplate them. And then that third person within you that is still you is criticizing the self that you are, the idea of the self that you have of yourself, in order to arrive at a better version of yourself. Okay. And I've actually even talked about this with a psychiatrist or a psychologist that does understand these kinds of things, and he also agreed. Yes, it is the analytical Luke that is the higher version of yourself, which is true, but also not true, and that is because the mediary, okay, the medium and the guy that mediates between third person and first person, then also takes the variables between first person and third person and mediates between the two, and then using rationale, reason, and logic can come to the conclusion that maybe one of them is right, one of them is more right than the other, or they're both wrong. Yeah, both wrong. I love how that lightning and thunder just synergize so well with that. Okay, so anyways, this is how second person can be the rationale and the reasoning and the logic that intermediates between. It's like the in-betweener or something, you know what I mean? Because your idea of yourself, could be right. And the constructive critical analyst of you analyzing yourself in order to arrive at a better version of yourself could also be right. But when you play those two against each other, just always remember, it's always you. These are always you. But you're using this to your advantage so that you can have a dialogue with yourself in order to enlighten yourself without actually having to talk to anybody else. And then when you have the mediator between these first persons and third persons, yes, even the second person, oh, yes, of course, it is you as well, can then allow for the two variables of first person and third person to be mediated because, maybe first person is right. And third person being the critic that would allow for the critical analysis being wrong, the mediator would know that what is wrong allows to know why the first person would be right. But maybe they're both wrong. And that's when the mediator would then use reason and rationale and logic in order to mediate between both of those variables, logically understanding how they are wrong. To then mediate what would be right from learning from those two wrongs to make the right. Okay? And that's how knowing what is wrong can teach you what is right. But you have to be willing to mediate yourself. You also have to be willing to see yourself from third person, because then it's almost like, you're talking to yourself, but you know why you're talking to yourself. It's because when you're always in first person all this time, it's always kind of egotalitarian kind of behavior. You know what I mean? And I say totalitarian because, totalitarianism is kind of like a dictatorship, fascism, right? So when you never go outside of first person, you are always kind of just dictating the idea of the self that you are, never actually constructively criticizing yourself and then mediating to actually arrive at a better and better version of yourself forevermore. Okay. And then when you have these things, and then you also realize, well, let's just say we went to the body, okay? And if the body is, the self, but my first person is what I have as a concept of myself within my mind, then zero would then be the product, being my vessel, okay? And I'm going to now talk about, because, obviously your vessel is real. And the idea that you have of yourself within first person, within your ego, could be illusion. It doesn't have to be an entire illusion, but it could be delusional, and the aspect that you could be thinking something about yourself within your mind that is actually not true at all. Okay, or it is, right? Or it is, and this is the benefit of playing all these persons that are always all you. Like, don't get me wrong. If when you start thinking that these are different people, then you kind of have you do have a disorder. But when you are consciously aware of why you're doing it and how it benefits you to be a better version of yourself, you will then understand why you are doing it, because this does allow you to be a better version of yourself. And so let's think about it. More often than not, we dwell in first person, the idea of the self, being very egotistical. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing because you should hang on to your ego. But when you make yourself a number one fan of yourself first, how could you be a better fan of yourself? Right? Because we all want to be our number one fans. We all want to be rooting for ourselves. That's totally understandable. But when it is the third person that would be constructively criticizing the idea of the self within first person to then be a better version through that critique, you realize, if I put my third person first and I become a critic of myself first and a fan of myself second, yes, that is how you will be your number one fan. You see? And it is because that you are willing to critique yourself to constantly be something better, as the idea of the self without the critique will never be the best version and never get better. Yeah. But then you realize, well, no, it is actually the third person that I would put second. I would put the first person third, and I would put the second person first, the mediation. Because allowing for the mediator to be the basically the one that allows the assessment of the two variables to be rationalized can actually come to the greater truth, and that is why, yes, I would put the medium first. Yes. And then, with the understanding, yes, since we have all these three constructs within the mind, your vessel would then be zero, the final product of the vessel that you are inhabiting. Okay, and let's also keep in mind that it is the mind that lies within the vessel. It is not the body that is within the brain. The brain is within the body. Okay, and it's good to be aware of this. Okay, and zero isn't nothing. It's just that if we go 1, 2, 3. And then we go to the product of the self being your vessel of what you have a material construct with. That's the idea of talking about it as a product, because it is material. It has mass. It has weight. Okay, yeah, and it is your tool that allows you to do what I'm doing right now, for example. Okay, but now I'm going to be talking about furthermore my notes on my on the self. That I developed because I realized that I wanted to, research further. But when the research that I did wasn't out there from anybody else, I then began my existential search in order to come to understandings of what my ideas would be for what else the self would be. Now, I then go to fourth person. So again, zero would be the vessel, the body. Okay, 1 would be the idea of the self, the ego. The second person is the mediator, the medium. Okay, the third person is the analytical critique part of you. Okay, and then again, if the third person would be saying you to yourself, right? You're talking to yourself from the outside coming in, right? And first person says I, me, I, me, myself, and I. The second person would be able to use both and all of those. Yeah. Because the mediator would be able to use I, me, myself, I, you, even them, for example. Because that is what the mediator is doing. But, don't come into the delusion that you should be referring to yourself because of these things as yourself being something as they or them, because that is a delusion. Yourself contains these aspects of yourself, but being conscious of it, you realize they all rest within the self of the essence of your being. They are aspects of the self, but they are all part of your essence that is making of you. They are not separate entities of one another. Okay? And when these kinds of delusions arise, then you start, maybe suffering from schizophrenia or something like that, or multiple personality disorder. But that's also why I talk about these things, because if that's the case for you, this is how you could cure yourself, is by coming to the understanding and be consciously aware of the rationale and the reasoning behind why, when you would be talking to yourself and mediating yourself, it is, yes, all part of the essence of your being. All these things are not separate voices or separate people. They are all you. And when you can realize that, should you have a mental disorder like these kinds of things, you can then come to the understanding on how to cure yourself. Okay? And if that's not something you're ready for, that's fine. But that's also part of the purpose of this video. Okay, so now moving forward, we're going to talk about the primary self, which is the instinctual self. And, for example, it's raining right now. Now, the primal self, fourth person, is the instinct of our self to survive. Okay, and it is an aspect of the self beyond first, second, and third person and the vessel. Because it is the fourth person then that says, yes, I need to keep myself alive. And yeah, you should. Yeah, you should want to keep yourself alive. Yeah, you should. And that's why, maybe you could say it's how we're wired, or it's the instinctual nature, but, it's a good thing. Because if you did not have the will to survive and do what you can to survive, why would even the human species ever have evolved and continued at all? Yeah, so the fourth person allows for the survival. You could say it's kind of like the fight or flight, you know what I mean? Or maybe you run, you know what I mean? Or whatever. But this is the instinct to survive. And that would be, yes, fourth person. Okay, the primary self. Then I go into fifth person, okay? And it's probably good if I start using another voice like this, because the way that I see the fifth person is the comical self, the joker. Yeah, and when I talk about the comical self is joking, is laughing, is enjoying themselves and having a good time. Because when you can laugh at life and what things happen around you and you can laugh at them, what you're doing is the laughter that feeds your soul, that I'm going to be talking about as well as part of the aspect of the self that you are as well. Okay? And I also strongly encourage you to not just accept what I am saying just the way that it is. I strongly encourage you to think about it and think about it for yourself and contemplate it. And don't just blindly accept everything I say, because that is not the idea of what I am doing right now and trying to help you or whoever would be watching this. The idea is I want you to think about it. Does it make, if you're the listener or the viewer, you say, does this make sense to me? And that's what I want you to be saying, because the idea is I do want you to think about it. I do want you to contemplate it. And I want you to help guide you to figure these things out for yourself, as opposed to you just accepting it that would not actually allow for that understanding. Okay. So the fifth person is like, I laugh at life. I'm the joker. Okay. But let's just say you were in fifth person and you were laughing at life. You might go into fourth person when you realize that you're gonna, drown, or maybe you're gonna get hit by some hail or something and you're gonna die, right? So maybe there could be some guy that's like singing in the rain here, and then he's laughing at all that life. But then it would be the fourth person that says, like, for example, like I am right now inside. I should probably be inside with a roof over my head. Yeah. Yeah. So when they say look out for number one, it is the fourth person that looks out for number one, which is zero being your vessel. Okay. Because it could be the ego being first person that would also dwell into fifth person, just singing the rain, la la la, whatever. Okay. So, anyways, then I go to sixth person, and sixth person would be synonymous with like the divine loving mother. Okay, and maybe look at like Mother Nature and a mother's love and nurturing and loving you no matter what, unconditional love, unconditional, and we all love unconditional love, don't we? Yeah, we all love being loved no matter what we do, and that would be the sixth person, is just unconditional love no matter what. Okay. And it's not a bad thing, but I'm going to be explained as I talk about the seventh person why it is not always a good thing and why it is actually not always love, even though it is. Okay. And if this is confusing for you, I'm doing my best to explain these things. So the sixth person would be the divine loving mother, maybe your mother that loves you no matter what you do. And, it's usually a very, very good thing for you. It is. Okay. And I'm going to talk about a brief example, maybe you got like a fail on your test when you got back home from school, and your mother unconditionally loved you even though you failed the test at school in, math. And your mother unconditionally loved you. Okay, fair enough. And that's good. Want to know why? Because there's no sense in beating the kid down when he failed the test. If anything, now he's just going to do worse because you're not allowing that kid to build self-esteem for themselves when you just beat them down more than what they already see on the test where they failed. Yeah. So yeah, I would certainly agree that the divine loving mother that would love the child with unconditional love when they fail a test, I agree. Yes, that's a good thing because I can see the aftermath of where that would go and how that child would then have that unconditional love to be in a better frame of mind to actually pass the test. Yeah. And then we're going to go into seventh person, and I'm going to use another example. But seventh person would be the Supreme Father. The Supreme Father. And I'm not saying father is above mother. They're just different. Okay, it's not about one against the other. It's not about one being higher than the other. But I do put the Supreme Father at 7 and the Divine Loving Mother at 6, and there's a reason for that. Because unconditional love, no matter what somebody does, is not actually always love. Okay, and for example, let's say you're the boy that is always mean to your mother, and you're that kind of boy that is always, cussing at your mother and giving her a hard time, and you never do any chores around the house, and your mom loves you, she gives you that unconditional love, but you never reciprocate it. Okay, then the father, he says, son, I want to have a talk with you. And when dad comes in and he says he wants to have a talk with you, he kind of looks a little bit mean. Okay, and then you're like, okay, dad, and you sit down, and your dad's like, I want to have a talk with you about how you're treating your mother, and the way that you're cussing and swearing at your mother and never helping around the house, you're gonna have to stop doing that. Okay, and then maybe the child would then be like, no, I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna do that. Okay, and then this is still love, and I will rationalize it. And don't get scared, but I'm just gonna do an example. Okay, of what the Supreme Father would then say. Okay, and it's not like you slap the kid. Okay, you don't not resorting to violence. That's never the answer. No, it's not. Okay, but yeah, then you get scary. Then dad gets scary. Yeah, and then, son, you're never gonna do that again. You hear me? Never. Okay, and it's scary. Okay, but that's why the Supreme Father knows that when you're kind of just soft with somebody that would always misbehave, and you're just kind of kind towards them and loving towards them, the Supreme Father eventually realizes, yeah, it's time for tough love. Tough love. And it is love, because you should be treating your mother right. And that's when the Father knows, yeah, I'm going to get scary. Okay? Because if you're not going to treat your mother right, I'm going to make it scary for you so you do. Yeah. Okay. And, it's the point is not to, scare the kid, but at the same time it is. Because it is when you get scary as the Supreme Father, when somebody never ever stops misbehaving, that they listen. They listen. Because when it's scary, you see, I'm listening, right? Yeah. And, when your mother would love you and you're always mean to your mother, you see, and she's always nice to you, then you kind of just, ha, 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 ha. You don't care. You don't care. And that's when dad comes in and says, you better care! You see, and then, oh, I'm listening, dad. Yeah, okay. And, We can even think about the Ten Commandments that were told to Moses. Had God said a commandment, a law on how to behave, right? Like, thou shalt not steal. If the commandment was said in a tone of voice that was not commanding, would Moses listen? Right? Would Moses listen? And if God says, well, thou should not steal. Okay. Yeah. No, thou should not steal. Don't do it. Okay. And that, you know what I mean? And then Moses would probably be like, well, maybe it wouldn't be so bad if I did. Right? And that's why God would say, thou shalt not steal! You see? Because that is a commandment. It is a commandment. Yes. And that is why, when God did tell the Ten Commandments to Moses, it would be in a commanding manner. Like, you fucking better listen. Excuse my language. Yeah, I guess I'll cut that out. But yeah, you better listen. Yeah, you better listen. Okay. And, this is how the Supreme Father would do things. And again, the Divine Loving Mother is not wrong the way that she does things. It's not wrong. But Dad knows when to come in to make sure you stop stepping on Mom's toes. Okay. So then moving forward after this, okay, these are all aspects of everybody. You can be a woman that has all these aspects too. Yeah, it's not like you would just be a woman with a Divine Loving Mother. You have the Supreme Father aspect in yourself as well. We all have these things. And even the man, yes, you also have the Divine Loving Mother inside of you as well. It's another aspect of yourself. Because, when, maybe you saved your girlfriend's life and she's crying and then, you feel your emotions and become vulnerable to them and, you start talking about how much you love each other. Yes, even the man that becomes vulnerable to his emotions allows the man to be more than the man and becomes willing to express himself and his emotions and let them come out instead of bottling them in. So, maybe you watch like some romantic movie. If you were the guy that, you felt the tears coming and you did cry, I would say you're more of a man. Mm-hmm. And the man that would see something in the movie that he watches and, holds the tears in, I would say you're less of a man because I know it would be more challenging you to let those tears come down. Mm-hmm. Okay. So now I'm going to go into eighth person, and an eighth person is the silent self. And there's really not too much to say about the silent self, as it is the silent self. But what is good about the silent self is sometimes it is the best answer. And the reason why the silent self allows for the opportunity to know better is because the silent self can be silent about what an answer would be. And as opposed to searching for an answer, the silent self would let the answer come to them. Yeah. Okay, now we're going to be going into the soul self. The soul self, or maybe you say the spirit, whatever. And that's when I talked about, for example, the comical fifth person self. That laughter would be, yes, food for your ninth person, being your soul. Your soul. Okay. And is it the essence of your being? And that's a great question. And again, this is why I developed my notes on on the self. And I do go past the soul self. I personally do not think that it is the essence of the being. No. So then I go back even further. Okay, and it's like we're going backwards to discover the essence of our being. Okay, so then we go to 10th person. And the 10th person would be the conscious self. Conscious. Okay. And it would be the conscious self that would allow for the soul self to have a consciousness. Yes. Okay. So we're going back to, because when we go back, we discover the essence of our being, as opposed to, just seeing ourselves in the mirror. Yeah. And then we go to the 11th person. But when we start going back from the conscious self, you're then realizing how the conscious self would become into fruition, as you would then have the subconscious self. And the subconscious self is kind of like when we do something on autopilot. You know what I mean? Like, for example, maybe not the best example, but let's say someone waves at you. It could be the subconscious self that would not think about it and would wave back, right? That's kind of like autopilot. It's kind of like, yeah. And then even so the subconscious self kind of ties into the primal self being fourth person, fight or flight, right? You're not really thinking about it. You just, right? You do it. Yeah, it's kind of like autopilot. You know what I mean? It's kind of like part of the instinctual nature, and it's subconscious, okay? But then you go to the unconscious self, which means you would have no comprehension of yourself at all. But when you go back as far as you would realize, yeah, you would start there. So, is your integrity there? No, because it's unconscious. Yeah. But regardless, that is what you would go back to, and that would be 12th person. And what would be before that? The non-self. The non-self. And, even in the Bible, for example, they say, first there was nothing and then there was light. Okay. So, for example, if the non-self, would exist in nothing, yes, then we take 10, 11, 12 and we put them with the nothing before that soul self being the light. Okay. And then we realize when we would be an unconscious self, existing in nothing, like this non kind of self, you see, when we're going to go back to the non-self for a bit. If you don't know how science works, for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. Therefore, the equal and opposite reaction of the non-self would be, yes, a self that has an existence as opposed to no existence at all. As the non-self would not really be a self, but it is the non-self that allows for the existence of 12 to 0, being the self. Okay? But without 13 and the non-self, for every action there would be an equal and opposite reaction. But when there is, no action at all, the equal and opposite reaction of that is, yes, you have action. Mm-hmm. And so then the unconscious self that would be living, like in a void space of nothing, would certainly be unconscious. And, if you want to look at it in the way they talk about kind of like God, the creator, what would allow for something to be made out of nothing when there is a consciousness that would exist there that would become self-aware, being the conscious? Yes, you would have to be able to manifest something from nothing, being a creator. Yeah. Therefore, should we come from a creator? And again, I encourage you to think about this. I don't only encourage you to just accept it. That's really not the idea, because then you're probably not going to learn much. But if should the creator, or if the creator, or it actually did, the creator created all of us. If the creator was the one that created us all, or maybe that's how we want to say God, for example. Then, not to confuse anybody, but if you take 1 and you divide it by 0, it equals infinity. Okay, and what is happening is, the creator then is being divided by nothing, the void space, but being a creator in order to create everything. So anyways, I know this is kind of a deep topic, and for some of you may have got lost at like 6 or 7, or maybe even before when I was talking about first, second, and third, and that's fine, because you can watch it again, and you can also comment and ask questions. Yeah, I'm always willing to answer if you have any questions, and I also encourage you to ask these questions for yourself. Yeah, and I'm not saying I'm right, but I'm not going to say I'm wrong. Okay. And the difference between a guess and a hypothesis is a guess is kind of like a wild goose guess. You're just kind of, pulling something out of your butt. But you don't actually have any facts or figures or anything in order to derive that guess off of, which means it's an opinion, which is fine, because that's still a starting point. But the reason why this is a hypothesis is because it is an educated guess, where I am using these variables in order to understand my comprehension as the way that I see it now. And I can certainly tell you in the future, I won't be seeing it the way that I see it now, but I know it's a stepping stone. Yeah. Okay. Have a good day.